Okay. All right, we got 1 minute to go time here. Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, it's 6:30, so let's get started. And I'm hoping Troy was going to come. He's on vacation, but oh, here he is. Good. Troy, are you there?
Looks like he's connecting.
He is, yes. I know Troy is in a potentially sensitive signal area, so as long as he's here, I'm going to just throw it right to him, let him go first, and then we can deal with our introductions and formalities later.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that.
No problem. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you. Sitting here on vacation, and I just really appreciate all that everybody's doing on the golf course committee. I just want to share a few ideas that I've been working on over the course of the last several weeks. And obviously, not being a member of the golf course committee, these are just ideas that I have that I want to share with you. I've shared some of these thoughts with our board at Carmel Mountain United, and from a big picture perspective, we're in a tough spot here, right? We've been at this for nearly 3 years, and frankly, we haven't made much progress relative to New Urban West. New Urban West hasn't worked with the community. They haven't made any major concessions, and we're also in a tough spot with the city. The city wants to build, and they want to build everywhere. And frankly, I hate the spot we're in. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. I think probably a lot of people feel the same way. But it is a fact. And so I've been talking to a lot of elected officials, some other officials who weren't elected, and trying to get a feel for what would be the best strategy that we could take going forward. And I know the golf course committee has worked on some great ideas, and I don't want to really throw a monkey wrench into that, but as speaking as Carmel Mountain Ranch United, we've basically been on the premise of keeping our AR1-1 zoning. And I unfortunately realize now that I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm an optimist, but I think this property will be built on to some degree. And I think we can look at the Junipers project, which was just approved across the way in Carmel Highlands, which was a project that I said at the last meeting was a much better project than the project that we're facing. It's 500 units. It's a combination of rental, for sale, single family, and it's 500 units. And talking to some of our elected officials, they're saying to me, they're concerned about, some of the things I've been saying, which are relative to building in the town center. I think everybody agrees that's a really great idea, but as it relates to the Trails project, it's really not a relevant topic. I mean, the Planning Commission is going to vote on this likely within the next couple of months. And I suspect that the Planning Commission, if we look at, what they've done in the past, are very favorable towards building. So the suggestion I'm going to make, and a suggestion that I think we should consider is, as you guys write your alternative, I think your original letter said 200 to 300 units. And then, now there was, some talk of 1,800 units, pushing most of those to the town center. But I think that confuses matters. And my suggestion would be to use the junipers as a model and to say, look, 500 units is acceptable. We're willing to negotiate as that being the high end of the unit count. I think it's fairly simple. And remember, the city's got all kinds of projects that are coming online. I mean, there's project after project after project, and long, lengthy emails, long dissertations. They're just not gonna listen. So it would seem to me that the best course of action would be to look at the junipers as a model and say, look, that's acceptable to us. We're willing to negotiate, but that's the high end of what we're willing to negotiate. And hopefully our city council people will hear us, and they will work with other city council people to say, you know what, this is good, this building. I know that Marnie ran on the idea of it's okay to build in my backyard. And yet I think if we had 500 units instead of 1,200, we would all be happier. So these are kind of the thoughts that I had, and I wanted to share, not really with any other reason, to say I think it's possible that we could fight on that idea.
So is this the official position of CMR United at this point? Is that what you said?
Well, I think what CMR United is prepared to do is not to be specific, other than to say that we're willing to negotiate.
Gotcha.
We're willing to come off of zero building. I mean, I think you guys are the ones that are putting together some sort of a counter proposal. I honestly don't think 200 to 250. I mean, I think we can look in context of what is happening. And I think it's a good argument to look in context of what's happening. I mean, Poway is a different city. Stone Ridge is 200 units, and it's and that's reasonable. But they have basically a vote before changing zoning of the people. We don't have that. But you could point to Escondido, which New Urban West did, and that was less than 500 units. You can point to obviously Carmel Highlands, and that's 500 units. You can point to Stone Ridge, and if you add all those up and the other properties, they're still less than 1,200. So I think it's fair to say that I don't believe New Urban West has been forthright with the community. They haven't worked with the community, and and at some level, I think people, elected officials, are going to appreciate that, but they also need to build, and they need to feel like that we're not NIMBYs, and I don't think we are. And I do think building in the town center is a great idea. It's just that, there's zoning changes that have to happen there to make that happen. And it's not really what's on the table. And we're running out of time. I mean, this thing probably goes, my understanding is probably to the planning commission sometime in July, maybe longer, maybe, we get something meaningful out of the EIR stuff. And if we do, great. I mean, it's, we're just saying we're open to negotiation.
Understood. Okay. So for those of you who joined a couple of minutes later, Troy, he went first tonight because he's out on his boat there, and wanted to make sure he got his piece said here before he lost signal or something. So I don't know if there's anyone that wishes to comment on what Troy had to say or ask him any questions, but I'll open that up, and then we'll actually jump back in and do introductions and all that stuff. So any questions or comments regarding Troy's statement at this point?
Yeah, I had something, Eric.
Yeah.
So Troy, one of the concerns that's been kind of being discussed is that, the letter that we wrote originally that had, 200, 250 units. And then now we're sort of trying to back up and say, okay, wait a minute, we need to rethink, since the TPA is going to have at least 200, 250 units. So that's a given, because that's within the half-mile radius, but unfortunately that's in your backyard, but that's what's going to happen there no matter what. So we're saying that basically 300 more units would be allowable in our eyes for the rest of the project. That includes those 200 units.
That's correct, yes. And, ultimately, I don't think we can necessarily dictate where they're built. I mean, that's up to the developer and the city and so forth. But yeah, a total of 500. And I think that that's a fair compromise. I really do. I mean, again, I hate where we are. I don't think we should change AR1-1 zoning, but, I've come to the realization that, I've negotiated things all my life. And if we end up with 1,200 units, I'm going to spend 3 years of my life and have done nothing.
So, Troy, with these units that you're talking about, do you want to talk at all about how many stories? I mean, nobody likes 4 stories or 3 stories. I mean, ideally, we'd like to see 2-story buildings. Are you suggesting that we include that when we're
Well, I think you
planting?
can certainly include that. I mean, that's, certainly something you can ask for. And I think it's a reasonable ask. And if you're building 500 units, there's plenty of land to build 2 stories, right?
Right.
And I think that would be far less egregious to all of us. I mean, Kurt talks about, I'm in the TPA zone, and, I get that. And, I would much rather see 2 stories than 4 stories, of course. And yet it may be 4 stories, and, I can live with whatever, but I think what we need to do is be pragmatic, be simple, and be direct, and use the junipers as a good example, because the junipers is, similar amount of property, and it also includes single family homes, not just, and I don't think the city really wants to build single family homes, but God knows we've got a shortage of them.
And what do you think would be the logic for the planning commission or the city to even consider, the junipers? They could say that that's a completely different deal. It's across the highway. It's got nothing to do with this. So,
well, you could say, geographically, it's very, very similar. It's literally right across the highway. It's a closed golf course. It's the same amount of acreage. Why is it 500 there, and why is it 1,200 in Carmel Mountain? It's actually a better property to build on over there because they have contiguous fairways. So it's not just all separate individual fairways. So I think you could even argue that there should be less. But you use that as a point of reference. I mean, it has been approved. There was a big battle over it. I mean, New Urban West has been great at telling us how they're the good guys. And, we could have had Lennar in here. But you know what? Lennar worked with the neighborhood over there. They worked with them a lot. And concessions were made. And that's the end result. So I think it gives you a model that you can point to say, look, let's see some consistency here. Why are we so much different?
Hey, can I ask a quick question to the group? Do we have any educated guesses of why this is? Like, why right across the freeway when we know what the cities and the county and the state's political climate is with regards to building and building dense, is why have these other projects, these other builders not gone the route that New Urban West did? Why is everybody not proposing 12, 15, 1,800 apartments shoved down golf courses? What's the reason behind it? Is there something that we're missing as to, do we just get stuck with New Urban West and they got greedy? But they didn't do that in Escondido. I much prefer the Escondido project to what they're trying to do here. So do we have an educated guess on that? It looks like Harold has his hand raised.
I have a strong opinion about this. We're stuck in the middle of a political, turnaround. And unfortunately, years ago, the city actually listened to the community. They actually put projects on hold and worked to reduce the densities. They worked to reduce, create architectural simplicity and integration with the community. They actually cared about what the neighborhoods look like. Now it's not that way as much. It's more about getting the numbers up trying to create this persona of California being inclusive and open. And, because people, the reports are that people are moving out. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a thing where they're trying to create a different storyline. And
Let me share a couple of things.
Yeah, go ahead, Troy.
Brief comment here, because I can't stay long because I could drop any moment. But the winds are shifting, right? And actually, they're shifting now a little bit to our benefit because there's a big push for reducing greenhouse gases and the transportation thing and building in a more sensible way than there was 2-3 years ago when New Urban West came onto the scene, and they probably thought, well, we could just slam dunk everything, let's just go for the 1200. And it was probably something the prior city council would have gone for. But we heard Tara Lawson Renner last week, maybe it was last week, 2 weeks ago, and I shared with her my thoughts, and she's like, yeah, those are great ideas. And she's actually taking a position that we just got to have less driving, less cars. And so that's why I think we have an opportunity here when we didn't before.
I have a couple of thoughts. I know Eric mentioned some thoughts that I had last meeting, and just about my impressions from the Junipers Planning Commission, but not only the Junipers one, but other ones. It's number one, I do have a feeling why the Junipers is a different animal than Trails. And it's because Junipers, Lennar is a builder. And I don't think New Urban West is a builder. I think in this case, because of the apartment complexes and the condo complexes, and during the meetings there, over the last couple of years, there would occasionally be these mentions about, oh, well, we need to balance the investors' requirements. So I think what they're doing is they're building this thing. This is all a giant spec project that they're building speculatively to resell. The apartments and condos, like they're packaged on the Trails, are going to be real easy for them to resell to people.
I think that's pretty typical for any multifamily housing, though, right? Most of those properties get sold to someone else.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're doing with this for sure. But when it comes to the support from the city council or the commission, I maybe listened to, during the last couple of years, I've listened to 4 or 5 of the planning commission hearings, and basically my take is they're hostile to our concerns. They really don't care.
Yeah.
For them, they're doing the what is it, plausible deniability, that, oh, there's a city ordinance that says that if part of your project is TPA, then the whole thing is TPA. So this whole thing is TPA. And when we look at a map, no elevations taking into account, but we look at a map, it's just like, it's just an easy walk. There's trails, it's going to be connectivity city. And the Junipers, the planning commission members were falling all over themselves to compliment Lennar on their public environment, their public connectivity or whatever they were doing, outreach. And you can bet that Trails that Urban West is going to present their stuff, and it's going to look the same. They've got these pictures of everybody at these workshops where they're deciding, whether to use orange plants or blue plants. But that's not what they're going to say. They're going to say, look, we went all over this with the design. So anything that we say in terms of their fake outreach, it's going to come off as whining and sore losers, unfortunately. So I don't know. I think we're, like Troy said, we're in a crappy position. And I think that they really, what I heard in the Junipers meeting was they'll be happy with the 1200. That one commissioner, Whalen, he was griping because they only built 500 there. That junipers is like, that was underutilized. You know, why did you just do that? You know, why didn't you do more? And I felt like there was just we're not going to get any traction with fire evacuation issues, because now they've got this new commissioner, Marlborough, who was an ex-deputy fire chief of San Diego for years. And his reply, or they all deferred to him, and his estimation of the juniper situation was, well, yeah, you know, you don't really have to do emergency evacuations that often. So as long as it's not really, 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 really bad, you know, that's what more can we ask? So I don't think we're going to get anywhere, you know, unfortunately. And Whalen specifically also said that, you know, we're talking about having the town center stuff done. And he specifically said, you know, there's junipers, and I guess other parts of that golf course is being developed by another developer. There's part of it being developed by Lennar, and there's a chunk that's another developer right there. And I forget what the name was, but basically he said, you know, we can't really redo every evaluation every time some new project comes out. So we do what we can do. And that was it. He just dismissed that. So yeah, everything is viewed standalone, which makes it much easier for the developers to make claims that this is the answer and that we've got it all covered. So I don't know.
Well, guys, I'm gonna sign
That's
off.
my
Harold,
bad
those
news.
those are good comments. And what I would like to remind everybody, I mean, if it was planning commission only, we don't have a chance. You're absolutely right. But we have to do, the only chance we have is this has to be approved by the city council, the entire city council.
Yeah.
And if Marnie, you know, and we don't know this, but if she was sensitive to our, you know, being able to negotiate and 500 units and using the junipers as a model, and she worked with her other colleagues, you know, there might be enough no votes there to say, you know, look, we're not doing 1,200 units. We're not going to do that. We'll do 500 units, but we're not going to do 1,200. And then, you know, Northern West and the Wang family, they have to make some decisions, right? Because the answer is no. And that's what I'm hoping might happen. And look, it's not a great place to be, but, you know, let's put our best foot forward. And, you know, these are just my thoughts. Obviously, I have great respect for all of you and all of your hard work and all of your dedication to our community. I mean, you're all true champions, and I'm thrilled to be able to call you my friends and neighbors. But I do think we've got to take a strong stance and make it simple and say, look, we can live with the Junipers project like that as a Trails project, and that's it. So with that, I got to sign off. I'm on vacation, and I still want to call in and share with you guys. So thanks, Eric, for putting me up front there. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for calling in, Troy, on your vacation. I appreciate it. And, you know, all of your compliments right back at you guys and you. So thank you very much.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Okay, let's, we didn't do intros because I knew Troy was you know, in a potentially precarious signal situation. So let's quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Eric Edelman. I'm the CMRSSCC board chairperson and golf course subcommittee chairperson. So why don't Kurt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody, Kurt Carlson, homeowner.
Thank you. John Schroeder.
I'm John Schroeder, homeowner at Carmel Mountain Ranch. Also a member of the golf course subcommittee.
Thank you. Michelle Mullen.
Michelle Mullen, homeowner.
Thank you. John Chu.
John Chu, homeowner, Carmel Mountain Ranch.
Thank you. Okay. Mark Clark, I know you were in here somewhere.
Mark Clark, homeowner, Carmel Mountain Ranch.
Rich,
Rich Krejci, homeowner, Carmel Mountain Ranch.
Larry Fontaine.
Larry Fontaine, homeowner, Carmel Mountain Ranch.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay, great. So that with that out of the way, I just need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Any second? Who was that?
Okay.
Did somebody say second?
Kurt Carlson, second.
Thank you. And then we'll just do it this way. If anybody's opposed to approving the agenda, just say so. And otherwise, we'll assume that it's unanimous approval of the agenda. All right, good. So I want, like I said, Troy needed to go first because I knew that sort of discussion from him was a slightly shifted position from CMR United and might impact the work that the golf course subcommittee is doing to an extent. So with that, I guess, we had a look, we've all seen the letter that John Chu has worked on and others have worked on with him. So John, do you want to give us an update as to where we are with that and how the sort of shift from CMR United and might impact what we're doing, and any thoughts on that?
So I don't think anything CMR United, well, other than the number of units we would counter with, is really, impacting the letter as is. Kurt has sent some comments. I guess we'll discuss that at some point. The letter is really a summation of what we wrote last year. It just tried to group things into kind of three categories for a matter of simplicity, right? Because we know the city, whoever's going to read it was not going to read that letter we sent. It was like 10 pages. Things were kind of scattered throughout, and it really was not written in a way or from an audience standpoint, right? It was written in the audience how we would consider the issues, not necessarily how a city councilman would consider the issues, right? Their top priority is housing, affordable housing, indirectly, how our citizens are getting input into developers, and to much lesser extent, impacts to the community, right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason why things are organized the way they are. I try to keep it 2 pages, just from it's kind of like a resume, right? Anything longer than 2 pages, they're probably not going to read.
Right.
And then it's broken into an issues section and then a recommendation section, right? So what do we want out of it?
Okay, good. Yeah, I've got it in front of me. I've looked at it and I've seen a number of us make comments. So I know that Kurt, you had some, the last email I saw was from you. I didn't get a chance to read it yet.
Yeah, it's just a few red lines I had. It was just, verbiage to me is really important. Anything that you leave out, sometimes, a second pair of eyes kind of catches that. And that's kind of what I was looking at. I had comments previously also, and I know some of that was in there too. So I just feel we need to make sure we don't leave anything out. If by just saying that you want to keep things out of the 50-foot buffer, as an example, then we're accepting that 50-foot buffer, and I don't think we should accept it. I think that's one of our points that we try to stay firm on, and try to keep it more of a variable. And I was 100, remember, originally, but variable 75 to 100 foot. So it doesn't look engineered, so it looks, meandering and natural. And, we need to protect those ridge lines and our view corridors. And I think we need to make that die to the fight kind of an issue. But, and then the other thing was the guidelines. The guidelines that New Urban West put together is, Kathy Reiser was originally with Presley of San Diego that did the development for Carmel Mountain Ranch. And Kathy is using the same model that she used for developing Carmel Mountain Ranch, which we just talked about. She's developing it, leaving it open for developers to come in and develop the different parcels. So, whatever happens on Unit 9 could be different from Unit 5 and different from Unit 4. I mean, those are the things that, whoever they sell to. It could be Lennar, it could be Kennar Homes, it could be, ABC Builder. It's one of those things that's, we have to be on the lookout for. And so the design guidelines we need to stay that we find it unacceptable that the design guidelines are doing things like neglecting the ridge lines and not putting in standards of development like changes of elevations. For example, if they were to put something on Unit 9, they need to lower things down so that creates more openness for the existing homes that are there, if you guys are following me. So if it drops the elevation down 10 to 15 feet, you've got a 5 to 8 foot slope that drops down off the back of the yard, which gives less height to the house or whatever the home or tower that they're putting up behind you. So those are just things that, they're just throwing out the baby with the bathwater in these design guidelines. They're not thinking about solid planning, sustainable principles. And it really bugs the heck out of me. And if you guys knew what they used to do and then what they're allowing now, you would go nuts like I am. And it's just, I can't believe this is actually happening. This is really, and you've got people that don't know anything about design anyway. They're sitting on those positions of planning commission and city council, and they're just going by what do you think, Kevin, or what do you think, Mark? Sad.
Right. Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any input on the letter that we're preparing here?
Yeah. One question or one thought on the recommendations where we talk about deed restricted and talk about it should be a minimum of 10%. I feel like we should go bolder there. There's no harm in doing that. I would prefer a higher percentage. Again, doesn't mean it's going to get approved. And even if it does, that's fine, right? It helps the younger families come into this community, which actually builds community where apartments, I've done a lot of research on this. I've shared this before. Your average apartment dweller lives in an apartment for less than 3 years. In Southern California, your average homeowner lives in a home for about 13 years or more, depending on the city they live in. So, having some more deed restricted affordable housing will actually help build community for those of lower income. Not Section 8, right? That's not what we're saying, but just like you said, the firefighters, the educators, those kinds of folks. So I would just go bolder there if we can, if everybody feels comfortable. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Anyone else?
So let me bring up a talking point. I think some of you saw the email that I had sent out just prior to the meeting. But for those of you who didn't see it, I think the two biggest issues that the residents here are really concerned about. Number one is fire and fire evacuation, and nobody's really looking at that. Nobody's put any numbers to how long it's going to take to get out of here if there's a fire, and certainly we've had a number of them. And the second issue certainly is traffic and the congestion, and they're both kind of linked together. And as I looked around, I came across this a while back. This is what it's called, SB 55. It's a Senate bill that's going through the legislature, a very high fire hazard severity zone. And what SB 55 says is SB 55 will put California on the path towards fire safety growth by prohibiting new development, commercial an industrial in a very high fire zone. And as we know, the southern part is in that zone. Now, I understand that as I read it, it really doesn't probably apply, but following along with what Troy is saying, I mean, we're in a tough spot. And I always like to be able to point to something. So even though it doesn't apply, probably, I mean, it's a very lengthy bill, and I read through it and kind of got lost halfway through it. But what I'm throwing out to the group is there any way, even though that it may or may not apply, is there any way that we can say, hey, even though this doesn't apply to San Diego, let's look at this, because it does mean something. I mean, it's, two of the biggest concerns is, if we have to evacuate, nobody's going to get out of here. We know that. So that's my comment to the group, and I'll look for comments back.
Okay. Any other board members with comments about anything Larry said or anything else? I will open it up to public comment after we've had a chance to talk here for a few more minutes.
Just put my 2 cents in here. Yeah, I kind of feel like Troy does in the part of his discussion, saying that, kind of we're in a tough spot here, and, kind of isn't a good feeling. That's new to hear that from Troy in New Urban West, the 500 unit number. I like the letter that you wrote, John Chu. I think that's, it's great, actually. It's very easy to read, and you can read it in like 10 minutes, and so I think it's going to be effective. Yeah, couple other, a little more detail that Kurt suggested sounds good. And then I think the big remaining item is, what we're going to propose, the number of units when we go through that math, that's on page 4 on that table. And, if we're going to make the argument that we should accept a density equivalent to the average of these comparable golf course developments, or if we should make the argument that it would be reasonable to propose a lesser density only because the golf course holes are not contiguous. That seems like what we need to get done tonight. So, I mean, that's all I have for now. I'll probably have more later.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what we're trying to get to tonight is what we fill into those spots where there are X's. Mark's point about upping the affordable deed restricted component, I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with, I mean, there's the fire issue is obviously huge to everybody. And our city council person is, very sensitive to fire safety issues. The problem we have at the planning commission is they're going to brush those off. I mean, we might have more luck with that at city council, we might not. But the city, whether it's legitimate, whether it's not legitimate, they've quote unquote done these studies and determined that, I mean, I think in the EIR, I don't know, forget what they said about fire safety in the EIR, but either that it was okay or it just wasn't able to mitigate it. So we're just going to let it be, or what was in there with regard to that, John?
It was basically saying that if they do some more mitigation, it talks about the fire of the particular, the real problem we have is it doesn't look at the CMR and the Northeast San Diego as a whole, right?
Right.
None of these project EIRs do.
Right.
And it's very difficult to argue that on a per project basis that it's going to be an issue. And it's really a counting level issue of whether, if a 1 in 100 year fire comes in, how the evacuation is supposed to go. And supposedly the fire department is supposed to be looking at that, and from county standpoint, that they're supposed to be looking at, just as Terry Lawson Romer said, that Sandag is supposed to be looking at traffic for all these projects combined. So it's not that we don't think it's an issue, and it might be an issue. It's the problems that we don't really have any technical justification behind it, right? Because the EIR has done the analysis, the fire safety has done an analysis, and supposedly it meets their criteria.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, there's not, to Troy's point and others, keeping our argument as narrow and simple as possible is probably better. I believe the letter that's drafted really does that to a large extent. And I think if we can finalize this thing and take, an average of the density or whatever it is, and tell them that, this is what we're looking at, and then, we can start hammering on our city council person's office that we want to negotiate with the city. And negotiating with New Urban West is one thing, but I think that we might not get anywhere with them. But I think from the standpoint of the city, it's they got 500 over here, so why are we getting 1,200 on our side? Is a pretty simple argument, and might be the fastest path towards cracking open some sort of a negotiation, because I think the Planning Commission will approve their project, and then it's going to be up to the city council. And at that point, we have to get our city council person's support, and she has to be willing to somehow lobby the support of enough other council people to vote this thing down. So the easier we make it for them, the better, I think.
One of the things that I actually like about Troy's comment is when we talk about the number of units, we have to use some sort of science. We can't just pick out a number, 250 or 300. It would be difficult to justify if they would say, well, where did you come up with that number? But Troy is actually pointing to something rather than just an arbitrary number. So it becomes simple too. That's probably a vote that I would go for. I like that. You're pointing to something.
Yeah, in terms of the number, I'm sorry, I guess Kurt is first because he did raise his hand, so.
I know, it's like sitting out there the whole time. I had a couple of things. One of them was this letter that we're putting together. I think it's important that we look as a group consistent with our allies that we have that we're working with. I'm talking about, the HOA, the Sierra Club. We just heard from CMR United, making sure that we're all talking the same thing. And I think they should, maybe a couple of those people in those different groups, I just recommend they review the letter that we're going to send to the city, because I think that there could be things that they could add to it that could give it a little more zest. And I'm honestly not a 2-page resume kind of person. I read a lot of resumes in my life, and usually the guys that have the most passion are the ones that are probably more than 2 pages. But also if it's put together well and lays out everything, which I think John has done in that initial draft, I think is done really well. I think that's important. I just feel that that's something that extra information that we gather and put together. And I agree that the numbers, we have to have the things that John put together and John Schroeder put together too on this last time about reducing the numbers a little bit more. If we were going to use the other golf courses like Juniper's is huge acreage, and the number of units that they're putting in there, if you compare that in a ratio, John, you're probably better at numbers at this than I am, as to what our acreage allows based on their ratio. And I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot less. So
So just go back to the numbers discussion for a second. What Troy is saying is it makes it very simple, right? That you don't have to argue about densities and what someone else is doing. You just say, well, it's a fairly comparable size property, not exactly, but they're contiguous versus non-contiguous. You could just point there, right? The other way to do it is say, well, we look at properties and densities. The double tree is actually a little bit smaller, right? So they put 530 units in 112 acres. So their density was 4.7, right? Right. So we looked at averages. We're talking about scaling it. You can get in these quite a bit of discussion, right, with people at the planning commission about densities and scaling, things like that. I'm not sure we want to go there, right? Because they could go there and say, well, wow, that density is not that high after all. We just put in 50 units per acre down in Mission Valley. So there's a simplicity to what Troy's saying that leaves it somewhat open-ended, right? So that, if we start talking about numbers and math, it can go the other way too.
I also like the simplicity of, what Troy said. He said, they're doing 536 over at the DoubleTree. Why should we have any more? So, 500 is our kind of our upper limit. And then, without using any math or ratios or anything, like Troy said, you just say, hey, but that's a different golf course. You got 3 or 4 contiguous holes right next to each other. Ours is, skinny strips of land. So, we could argue it should be a little less. And that's it. I mean, that keeps it, there's no numbers involved. There's no math or anything. Just, making the argument that, hey, can you see how ours is different? Maybe we should be looking at something a little less. And I don't know what that number is, but, I don't think we should leave that part of the argument out, though, just to make everyone, city council, whoever is going to be looking at this, to actually look at a map and just see how it's a little different over here.
I understand what you're saying, John, but they're not going to do that. These people aren't going to look at a map. They don't care to look at a map.
Well, okay, maybe
Right.
maybe not. You're probably right. I think you're right. I mean, they're not going to do the math, and they probably won't look at the map. So forget the map, but just make a statement.
No, I just feel like I feel like we should do the math. I think we should keep with the math, but also possibly go lower than the math a little bit, right? I think we should do both. Make a simple statement that's backed up with the math chart, right? Simple statement of, right, our development is non-contiguous holes, little skinny strips of land, and when you look at comparable projects, especially right next door, you have much lower density, and so we're proposing this density because of that, and then the chart below, and then that way you have both pieces of argument.
Use the acreage that New Urban West is using for their 1,200 units. Because they're leaving some holes not developed, right?
Yeah, but that's their fault.
Is using everything.
Right.
Well, I don't know if you talk about, if you were to look at the project as a whole, you would count all the acreage, right? Not just the acreage that they develop. You get that density calculation.
So on the coming up with a specific math or numbers, this is a yes or no vote. So I think just, the saying less is enough. We don't have to say how much less. Clearly put a demonstration of how much more huge this is than other similar developments is enough right there for a yes or no. If we get down and say specifically 400 or 600, I don't know if that will make the difference between a yes or no.
Okay. Harold is pointing out that the golf course across the freeway. Harold, can you state this for us? There's with the 2 developments, it's actually 867 units. Is that the same property?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I was looking at the drawings and listening to the discussion about junipers, there's this other unit that's between junipers and Carmel Mountain Road. And John reminded me that it's the Millennium Project. So there's actually so that golf course, it sounds like got broken up into two projects. John,
You're right,
maybe you
Harold.
have better input.
Yeah, the other project is, I believe, where the hotel was. So some
Yeah.
other developers in there building an apartment building.
Yeah, so that property, that I think that when you add that other one in there, it's kind of closer to our acreage also. I don't know how much it is exactly, but
Yeah, I have it.
I'm just saying that it may be a little bit iffy going with the 500 number.
It's 14.14.
But
15.
John, I had a question for you. The numbers that you were using for development, for Carmel Mountain, are you using the entire golf course or the areas that New Urban West is proposing to build on only?
Use the entire golf course.
Because purposely, New Urban West is not building on some of the areas of the golf course because of things like environmental. They're next to an open space area. Those areas are not being used. So if you're using them in the calculation, you're making it easier to increase that number up, the density more. So you need to kind of make it, that's why I was explaining about proportion. It has to be what New Urban West is proposing to build. Because like, for example, if you took the area between Waterfield Laurels and the condominium projects where Chikorita Creek goes, I'm losing the name here.
This is exactly why I think Troy's argument makes a lot of sense, right? You can get into these detailed discussions about what is the density per acre if you include this course, don't include this course, whole I mean, or unit, and is it a TPA or not a TPA? It can get, you can make it anything you want if you play with the numbers enough.
But there are things like roadway intersections and trail connections and things like that they wouldn't want to put those developments there because there's already another roadway, 50 feet away. So
John, I'm gonna agree with Kurt on this. I think just to keep it simple, we look at the holes that they are proposing to develop on only, and that way the math is simple. Now, if somebody else wants to come on with a big huge math discussion, and if Jonathan or somebody wants to go, but wait, you didn't include this hole and this hole and this hole, it's like, that's because you're not proposing to build on those. We're just going with the acreage that you're proposing to build on, and as such, I think we do that, and then we can keep it consistent. Because the point, John, is that if we don't do it, we also open it up for somebody else to do it and to make it look their way. At least if we have a stance that is defendable, we have, and like I said earlier, I think we should do both. Make the Troy type statement, but then have that chart as well and say, this is why we're proposing X, Y, Z. And it's very easy math. Boom, boom, boom.
Right.
I don't know. I come up on the side of John's logic that all you need is to, it's like reasonable doubt. You just have to say, we want less than they're doing. Because the big thing that they always go is, and I have heard them say this in multiple reviews is, well, I don't want to stop it just for that. That's what they said at the city council for the one down by the pizza place, by OG's. They said, well, for those things, we don't want to stop the vote just for that. So we're going to go ahead anyway. But yeah, I think it's better just to say, and then they can't get hooked into this big discussion or bring up other things, which, the developed versus undeveloped, but that's like in hole 9, the whole bottom half of hole 9 is some kind of a bioreserve area, not just the filtering thing, but there's a larger area. The reason that they stop where they stop. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not on the committee, so
they're building they're leaving open space open for parks. So you shouldn't include that. They're developing 11 of the 18 holes, which means that 7 holes that are not being built on. So if you include that in the projections, then they could take that number and then take the density using that extra space and cram it into the 11 holes. And that's what you're going to have for a density rather than just using the 11 holes. So, I mean,
So John, is the 103, what is it? I'm sorry, I was just looking at the number. Is it 103? 101.3. So I'm sorry, that number is all of the holes combined. Yes?
164 is all holes. Is existing property.
164. Okay. So I mean, what if we even did that? Let's say we say we did 164, and then we went to a 5.0 density. How many units is that?
164 times 5. It's 820.
Yeah.
Where did 5 come from?
A little bit high. I'm just looking at that's the highest density, like at the DoubleTree, it's 4.7. So I was thinking about being benevolent, right? But 800 is a little bit high.
So I think the problem, like, you know, part of the problem here is, right, we didn't include the Millennium PQ, right? So, you know, the numbers are quite a bit different if you include Millennium PQ in with the DoubleTree with what Juniper's is. I'm sorry. It's 867 real quick. One more.
If you include what they're actually doing on that property, then it is it's a lot closer to
6.885, right? So, you know, it's even worse if you look at it individually, right? Right. If you say, oh, well, everything could be like Millennium PQ.
If we're going to go down that road, then we should add the 50 units from the Alante project too, to the Carmel Mountain Ranch density.
No, it's a different property entirely though, right? I mean,
well,
Alante wasn't part of the golf course. It's not really.
If we start doing that, then we're drifting away from keeping it simple, folks.
You can't use that.
So, yeah, I mean.
So, John, to your point though, right? If we don't address what you just brought up, and I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the numbers you're at, but it looks like it made everything go up, at least that property. If we don't address it, then we leave it open for them to address, right?
So, yeah, I think there's a middle ground. We could say we want something comparable to Juniper's. And we could say, well, we would like a number no higher than Juniper's. And then we can say we've done an analysis that Juniper's is 4.7, and we multiply that by 101, and that gives us 474.
That's good.
So, right?
How much?
474.
And the 101 is what they're proposing to develop on.
Yes.
Let's do that.
That's
yeah.
good.
I'm good with that.
So we can just stick with that number, and then we can say, well, we looked at Juniper's, we think it's the most comparable, and we looked at the density you have, and you know, those are the numbers we came up with.
I mean, that's 2/3 less than what they're proposing right now. So that's got my vote.
Yep, and you know, and this should be open. The whole point of this letter is really to open the door, right? So we can go to this city council, talk to them, because I know Troy doesn't want to bring it up, but I think our arguments are much stronger, right? If we say maybe we don't come up with a plan we don't come up with the exact numbers for a town center development, but you know, you can't really emphasize the climate action benefits without kind of saying, well, more things should be in a town center. And so when we do go talk to the planning commission or the city council, those are things that we should definitely bring up, even though I don't think we can really articulate it in this letter.
I don't know. I kind of feel that even if it is something to consider in the future, right now, these guys are all eyes are forward and ears forward and listening to what is affecting Carmel Mountain Ranch and the development project by this owner. And that owner, the Wayne family, has nothing to do with the Sudbury properties at all. And I don't think, it sounds good, but I don't think it's gonna be, they're just gonna turn around and ignore it. You can mention it, but, I wouldn't rest my case on it by any shape or form of it all.
Yeah.
Are you saying, John, to like bring it up verbally, like in the, it says opposed in the letter, just make sure it's a point that is brought up, or what do
Yeah,
you
just
mean?
a point that we should bring up that,
I agree, because I mean, look, even if it doesn't, and I agree, Kurt, we can't hang our hat on it, but to ignore everything else that's going on around this community is asinine, pardon my French. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And to ignore that, okay, what you actually been wanting to do, you could go over to that. If you want another 1,000 apartments, pop them over there in the future, right? But let's have this project be 475. Let's be on deed restricted, single, condos, those types of things, to bring in the community, make these people part of the community, bring in people like firefighters, et cetera, right? But don't forget, for that project, that's critical, because this whole area is also going to have some things in the future that happen. So I agree with you, John. To do it verbally.
Yeah, I obviously I don't think we can go. Yeah, I think based upon what Troy is saying, what others are saying, that I don't think we can go into a plan and say, okay, include these other units. So we talked about 1,800 last time. That doesn't sound like it's going to happen the way we had originally thought, and that's fine. Yeah. Anyway, so getting back to this particular project, I think regarding the affordable housing, yeah, the only reason I was 10%, because I guess 10% is the requirement for affordable rentals, or affordable in general. They don't specify rentals or for D, but we can make it any number you want, I guess.
And I think we make it the higher the better. I mean, look, we've said this again, at least for me personally, this isn't conjecture, this isn't BS. Like, we're not talking about Section 8 homes, which I grew up in, right? I know what Section 8 are. I grew up in that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about educators, firefighters, nurses, Starbucks managers. I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
Is there a number you would?
I would go 30%. I mean, I want to kind of shock New Urban West. I want them to like fall off their chair and go, right. And I want the council, maybe not the planning committee, but I want the council to be like, okay, this community is actually serious about doing something, because we are. What this project doesn't do crap for San Diego. Let's all be honest with each other. This project, all these talking heads and all these politicians talking about this and this and this, this project doesn't do crap to help our actual housing, to help young families get into affordable housing, to buy and to become parts of communities. So it's a bunch of bull crap. And quite frankly, sorry, you can see I'm passionate about it. It frustrates me, because it's like these slithery little snakes, right? Both politicians and New Urban West are like putting this up as like it's some great thing for the community of San Diego. It's not. And we need to call it out as not. But like, we're not stupid. You're not going to pull the wool over our eyes. And you might still vote for it, but you're voting with eyes wide open, knowing that we know that you're full of crap. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
I'd be fine with, I mean, I was going to say 25%, but why not 30? I mean,
Well, I brought up a 30% number to Jonathan at one point, and he shot me down hard, saying that it wasn't financially sustainable. So I would say let's go slightly below that at 25.
Well, we're not arguing with Jonathan. We're talking to the
Correct.
planning commission. So of course he's going to say no.
Yeah,
And I'm okay if it's not financially viable at 30%. Maybe he'll go away.
The only reason why it's financially not viable is because the owner has put the property price of price on the land, right? If the price of the land is $1, you can make it 100% affordable.
But guys, when we start throwing around numbers, I'm just a guy that needs to point at something. I mean, we just right now just calling out numbers, and they're just arbitrary. Where are they coming from? That's my point.
There's always something arbitrary.
Yeah, it's like, where does 10% come from?
Right. So to me, I would say
Well,
that the number
that's a city
30% comes from, we've heard from Jonathan that that makes the project not viable. I'm going to call him on that and say, okay, well then, you know, let me challenge you on that. Tell me what a number is viable, but 10% is not acceptable. 10% is the bare minimum that the city put together, and it's not enough. It's not enough to actually affect the community of San Diego. So, okay, no to 30, at least we're in a conversation, right? And we're showing our genuineness to actually be part of this process, right? Where in my humble opinion, New Urban West has not shown a genuineness to truly engage the community for true, real change that's going to actually be good for San Diego. So to me, it's not, it's a number. Michelle talked about that. She threw that out to Jonathan. He didn't like it.
Yeah.
That's even more reason to pick it.
Okay, and I don't remember the exact number, but I mean, you know, the golf course, you know, the committee sent a letter in July. We need to make sure that we're tied into that letter. We're not, you know, we're not flip-flopping all around.
Yeah.
I forget what the number was.
You mean the total units number? Or,
Yeah.
well, that
The
was
total,
200 to 250.
That was the original number.
Yeah. Well, that's all that's out there.
I think in our favor, I don't think anybody read that letter. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be flippant about it, but I don't think anybody had got to all the way to the end of that.
Yeah.
Nobody at the city anyway. But I mean, I think the 30% number is like Mark said, it's us calling them out and saying, you know, you're telling us that this is what we need, yet you're not giving us what you tell us we need. So we're telling you that, you know, we want no more than whatever that was, 454, with no less than 30% of those being, you know, affordable. And whether that's 10%, I mean, and I would add that, you know, affordable to us means that there is some percentage of deed restricted housing that a firefighter who works at Station 42 in Carmel Mountain Ranch could buy a home and live here affordable, not rent a 2-bedroom apartment. That, you know, so that's I think where that's coming from. And I hear what Larry's saying, in that, you know, we don't have anything concrete to point to with regard to that number, but it is highlighting a couple of things. It's highlighting the hypocrisy of the city's position on it. It's highlighting the fact that we are not being NIMBYs about this, and it's hopefully taking some of the wind out of the YIMBY people that are going to call into these hearings and say that the community is opposed to affordable housing, because that's what they did to us at Alante, even though we had that argument in there, but we had so many other arguments, I think it was lost. So
And New Urban West is, you know, for the record, not proposing any deed restricted for sale. Right?
no,
So,
they're proposing zero.
you know, at the end of the day, there's no requirement. I mean,
No.
the city just says 10% if you want the bonus. That's the only reason why 10% exists at all. And
Really,
I mean,
joke.
it's yeah, I'm not opposed to 25 or 30.
Yeah.
It's not grounded to anything, but neither is 1,200 units.
Right.
but now let me ask a question. New Urban West isn't going to build all of this. The minute, you know, they get approval, they're going to start selling sections of this off.
Yep.
So, you know, if John Q developer comes in and, you know, buys whole number, whatever, 15, I mean, can he go ahead and sell them or rent them on his own? I mean, what's to prevent him from?
Well, once it's
something
approved, it's locked in as is. They can sell that part of the project, but the developer can only build what's been approved.
So it's apartments.
But I think
Okay.
so. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, that's what New Urban West essentially does. They plan, they get the entitlements and the zoning and all this stuff done, and then they sell it to a developer and they're out of there. And that's what the design guidelines that Kurt keeps pointing to are essentially for. It's a
Right.
design guideline for the developer that comes in that says this is how you have to do this.
Yeah, and then we probably won't get any say on those, on how those are interpreted either.
Hmm,
So you can bet that the Development Services Department is going to be serving developers.
that's what they're called. Development services.
Yep.
So, I mean, I guess what we need to do here tonight is to settle on what we write in this letter, and then we present that letter to the full board, which is a lot of us that are here, but then there's more of us that aren't here. And we get that approved and we send it in. So, I mean, it sounds to me like we're pretty much in agreement on the numbers at this point. I mean, we've batted around 25 and 30 in terms of the affordable component. I would really like to, I mean, we're not going to get it. We're not going to kid ourselves, but I think we should throw that deed restricted affordable comment and number in there. Just, I hated the fact that they cast us in such a negative light as a community at the Alante hearing. That I really didn't like that. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and they said that they called us horrible names, and I didn't like it. So I would like to diffuse that argument as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that 25 or 30 makes too much of a difference, to tell you the truth, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're a recommendation.
Right.
There's no basis, there's no legal basis tying that to anything. We state 75% of owner occupied, 25 or 30, is 5% really gonna make a difference?
Right.
I don't know.
I like
Okay.
the 30. I think the 30 is more impactful.
I agree. I mean, yeah, that's the bigger
Karen,
number. I don't have a problem with it. I mean,
right.
it's
Karen
a
Vogt
recommendation
says,
anyways.
Karen Vogt has a comment. So why don't we allow her to go ahead, Karen.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a few comments. I've been listening along the way. And when John Chu was talking about the fire safety analysis, I remember seeing a copy of a letter from Delano making a comment to the EIR. And I don't recall if fire safety was addressed in his comments. So that might be a place to check as far as like fire evacuation times. I don't know who else was privy to that
A bunch of us
letter.
wrote it in the ER. It gets comments in the ER. I don't. We're kind of all waiting for responses from that.
This was a letter that the attorney for the HOA, Delano, made to the city in response to the EIR. And I see Alan's here. And maybe he could comment on that.
Yes, am I on?
Yep.
Yep, you're on.
Okay, no, I don't think Delano commented on it. I did in my personal letter, and the Sierra Club did. I just wanted to point out that a couple of things. First off, the Junipers project, the draft environmental impact report, actually had a wildlife fire evacuation plan. This is what one looks like. We didn't get one. In the Juniper fire evacuation plan, it's got a lot of flaws in it, in my opinion. For example, they're going to evacuate to our fire station and to Carmel Mountain Plaza and to Rancho Bernardo High School. So you can see how realistic that might be. But they were able to do a study, and they claimed a reduction on their evacuation times from 8 hours to 3.5 hours, to which Commissioner Marlborough, who's the deputy fire commissioner, stated, well, if they get out in 2 to 4 hours, that sounds good to me. So, I mean, it was a disputed matter at the hearing because they didn't include all the other developments. But you can do a fire evacuation study. We didn't get one. And I raised it in my personal response to the draft EIR, and the Sierra Club did as well. And I just want to read you a sentence from that. From the Juniper's fire evacuation report. It says, at the time of this plan's preparation, there is no encompassing emergency evacuation plan available for northern San Diego region. That's exactly true. There is no fire evacuation plan for us. The county evacuation plan says we get out through State Route 56 and I-15 and Godspeed. That's it. That's the whole evacuation plan. Nothing. Now, if somebody doesn't file a lawsuit over that eventually as part of an inadequate draft environmental report, that's really too bad. But it's a mistake to give them a pass to say that they studied it, because they didn't. All they said in the draft EIR is that there's nothing in here that interferes with the county evacuation plan. Well, the county evacuation plan says we leave through 15 and 56. Doesn't say anything else. That's all it says. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I have a few more points, and I would like to speak about the Penasquitos situation. The PQ action group hired their independent fire safety person, and my contact over there said that they had brought up several key issues that were deficient in the city's fire safety evaluation. Now, there was no mention in it in the community planning meeting that we saw a few weeks ago, but the PQ group did hire their own fire safety expert, so I'll put that out there. I have a couple more items. I liked what Kurt Carlson said about having your letter be reviewed by key members of the HOA and also the Sierra Club, just to get some input or maybe some consistency, like in numbers or other conditions. Counting your density per acre on buildable acres is a good idea. I like that, because New Urban West has plans to build on every acre that is buildable. If you look at all the other acres that they're leaving, there's like water issues or environmental issues. So I think you should only count the 101, and I think that was good. I don't know if this was mentioned, but I personally would like any new development to be under the master HOA, because otherwise that will divide the community, I feel. And there was some wording, I can't remember where I read it at the city, but one of the planning elements was that you could not build a development that would divide the community. And so I feel having it all under the master HOA would be more unifying for Carmel Mountain. And then the last thing would be, is there any way you could request that if this gets approved, that all the land that's going to be developed can only be sold in one section, like it can't be chopped up and sold to different developers, that would be your request for unity or consistency for future developments? That would be a suggestion for me. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, guys.
While we're at it, any other public comment aside from board members?
I have one thing about Appendix A. I was wondering if we can just get rid of that. I'm not sure what it buys us to throw these comments back at the Planning Commission. I mean,
Yeah, it's probably not great for us to do that. But any public comment on this before we sort of try to steer this into a motion and resolution here tonight?
I think Alan wants to say something.
Yeah, Alan's got a question.
Yeah, I think you ought to leave the commissioner comments in. I mean, at the Rancho Penasquitos Junipers, and they were talking specifically about what they had said previously and how what was done matched up with it. So they looked at it, so we should play into it.
Yeah, hold their feet to the fire. I mean, you know, they say what they say, let's make them mean it, and you know, stick to their guns. I think that's, you know, we're looking for consistency, and that's our ally. If we can get some of those comments, them to stick by those things. They can easily forget them. It's been 2 years almost.
I think Commissioner Otsugi said he specifically looks to see how, if they did do anything about what he said.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we need to summarize this and complete this document.
I have a comment to say.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm agree with Troy. We are in very tough spot. I'm agree with this. You guys doing really good job on everything what you do. I don't know if we're in position to, I don't think really we're in position to call shots here. I don't think anybody going to listen to us, but we can try to throw some numbers and see what's happened. But I believe we should work on Kevin for the numbers before we get to the actually to the city present, because we need somebody, either it's going to be Norman West or Kevin on our, work with us. Otherwise, like Norman West already not working with us. We know that. And Kevin, we don't know yet. Yes, he rejected to meet with the community. Yes, but how about we try to reach out to him and try to invite him to the meeting? Let's try to reach to him and see what he stands. And maybe we can get some feeling on his amount he asking me. So probably this is what doesn't make sense for New Urban West to build less, because they're not going to make a profit. So he asking too much for the property. We need to work with, again, I said before in the meeting, and I think again, we need to negotiate with Kevin. Kevin have to be at the table with us. Otherwise, nobody going to listen to us. City will not listen. We're going to approve as 1,200 units as this project. We're not going to take your request. We can try through the numbers. Yes, we can try to compare to the other projects, what New Urban West doing, what in Penasquito's doing, done. We can try to do that. But is it they going to listen to us? Nah, I don't think so. Yes, Marnie, maybe, but she's going to be only one who's going to say, I'm opposed to this project, but rest of the city councils will say yes. I don't think she's going to convince every member of the city council to be on her side. I don't think so this is going to happen. So this is what, I did some I'm on it, from the day before even they closed the golf course. You people know the first minute, we found out it's going to be golf course closed. I knew it is going to be happening something like this. I was on that project. We did a lot of research in the behind the scenes, for the CMR United. I did a lot of research, and other members of the community did it. And it's possibility to fight this, but I'm okay, if we reduce the numbers of the units. And I told Frankel, personally, I told him, is the area where you can build, which not will affect current commoners in, like a views or anything. It's areas in Carmel Mountain on a golf course where, and everybody knows where they can build it and it will not be impacted too much as they want to do it. But he said, no, I don't want to do that because not feasible, because he knows it's going to, okay, you can try it, but before we get prepared grounds for acceptance of the less numbers of the units. To prepare numbers, we need to get work on Urban West or work on Kevin. There's two people who is all Atlantis, okay? Atlantis Group, who is a consultant for the Urban West. So this three identities, who is, we need to work on them. Like they lobby the city for their project, we need to lobby them for our project. Our project, reduce the numbers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Eric, I had one quick thing that just to comment on, and it was really about, when we went through the Alante project, during the planning commission and city council meetings, we had a lot of people that kind of surprised us talking up the project for Alante, like by BIA. Be prepared for that to happen also in our project. Also that, another thing that New Urban West is doing to help them show the planning commission and community city council that they're checking the box is these unsanctioned community meetings. Meetings that our group is not involved. We're the representatives of our community, yet I don't think any of us has gotten invites to those meetings. And we need to throw dirt on that somehow. I mean, I just feel like that is another opportunity for us to show how non-transparent New Urban West has been.
Hey, Kurt, it's even worse. I tried to go to one and they wouldn't let me into the Zoom meeting. There was several of us, they wouldn't let us in.
You have to bring that up. I mean,
Yeah.
the community are not open to the issues that have been discussed for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That's why, the picture's being painted without that. So we really need to address it in our letter. I really do feel that.
Yeah, just FYI, I was one of the people who was not allowed into that meeting that New Urban West held as well last Thursday or Thursday before. It was a meeting for Walden, and I happen to live in Walden. And so I requested a Zoom link and, from this group, and the Zoom link that came back was from Carly Keats of New Urban West. So they were pretty much running this. And, she left me in the waiting room for never let me in. I sent her an email, never got a response. And, Rich said that the same thing happened to him. So I sent an email to Marty Von Wolpert and let her know what happened, just explaining briefly and, letting her know that I'm having a hard time being convinced that they're engaging with the community in good faith. So I got a reply back from that email from Jack Hopreth. I think I hope I didn't murder his last name. Anyway, he said that he made Marty aware of it. So at least, it's out there. At least Jack knows.
Yeah, we need to address it in our letter.
I think it's Kurt. I mean, I agree with you, but that's one of those down the rabbit hole kind of issues. They say they engaged us. They can prove they were at X number of community council meetings. And when we say, well, we tried to get into the Zoom, you wouldn't let us in. It just, it takes us right down a rabbit hole.
It's only one example, right? It's only one example. We don't know how many meetings they've been holding.
It's
just too open-ended.
There's no requirement on their part to conduct public meetings the way we do. It's crappy of them not to do it. It's crappy of them not to let us in, but they're not under any obligation.
It wasn't their meeting.
Well, yeah,
it wasn't their meeting.
Yeah, right. I mean, we all know it was, but I think
they claim innocence.
We let our city council person know, we let her address that to the council versus us trying to pick away at, I mean, it's a tiny issue in the grand scheme of things. I don't think it belongs in the letter.
It's in our addendum A. It's in our addendum A. Matthew Blumhauser stated, "We prepared to show us every step along the way how you engage with the community." You also stated you had to show us that you've been working in good faith.
And they're going to say that they came to X number of subcommittee meetings and X number of community council meetings. And that's going to check that box off for whatever that guy's name you just mentioned is.
If it's something that helps us, Eric, like not, showing us anything about the project until the 18th meeting, you tell me if it's not worthy of having it.
I don't think it helps us.
So I think we sum that up, right? We without naming an explicit example, we state that New Urban West has not engaged with our community in good faith or prior to transparency.
Sure.
I think that falls into that category without
Yeah, I
explicitly
think
stating every single instance they have it.
I think that that's a good issue to bring up, as somebody suggested earlier, bring this up verbally in the public comment section at the planning commission meeting.
Right.
Because there was one, the PQ and on the junipers, there was one situation where they said, oh, it was something about the roundabout, the traffic roundabout. Said they claimed there was two times when it was supported. Well, one of them was a non-public meeting, and the guy from the committee, from the planning or the community planning group brought that up. So I think that's a better forum for it. Let's bring it up when sheer numbers and negative input is going to make some kind of an impact.
I agree with that.
I do have a question on your comment, Kurt. You wrote community group. Aren't we speaking for the community in the essence that our response is really the community's response as a whole, or do we need to explicitly state it's the community group, this, I guess, what do we call ourselves? Community planning group that is responding to this?
Well, I mean, it's, you could take out the word group, I suppose. It's, we are representing the community. And we report back with, connection to the city planning and so on. So, I mean, it's a small thing, but, your comment is, if everybody doesn't know, is about one of the comments I made in the letter. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because
Yeah.
Because I was I was debating whether I should go through all of this and just double check, or I should just leave it as is. So I think I'll just leave it as is for now.
Okay, so I mean, we need to get this thing to some kind of a conclusion so we can draft this letter and take it to the board.
One more comment I have to make. If you're going to mention that letter regarding the design elements, anything like this, can we put it in something about the security for our fences, like Kurt mentioned before? This is what it's really, we need to know for sure going to happen, either we have to raise a little bit our fences and have to be, if we're going to be divided our community in new HOA. So new HOA have to take care of the new fencing, not our HOA. So we have to make a little bit harder for them, plus we get our security. We need to get our fence only 4 feet high. In some areas, it's only 3 feet high, and this is a metal fence. So we need to shield us from the noise, from the criminal elements, from anything. So we need, either we have to raise it, I think it's by the code, it's 6 feet have to be, and we have 4 feet. We can have some fence, proposed like we have in Carmel Heights, with the, like a black fence, and on top is we have the glass or plastic, see-through, something like this. We can have something like this. So we have to work on that also, put in a letter if you guys going to put anything about the design elements. So this have to be part of it. Security for the current homeowners.
And Mark, a lot of that was addressed, I know, in the DEIR and a lot of comments that we all made. So, I mean, things like that right now, I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, Eric. I mean, those things have been addressed, and we did address them in that letter a little bit anyway.
Yeah, well, the Urban West in the beginning, we said we're going to replace our fence. We said, in one of our subcommittee meeting in the library, I remember we asked them, or somebody asked it, or I did. Somebody, so they reply, we're going to replace our current fence with their own fence. But then they went back and said the fence will be staying. So it's going to be the Realtors' responsibility for the fence, like used to be. But we have to have it, raise higher or something, because it's going to be impact us, and the cost is going to be for our HOA to replace the new, the fence to protect the members. So we have to do something about that, outline specifically. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a very granular kind of issue for where we are with this letter. I think we're trying to shorten it or keep it. We're trying to keep it short so that they'll read it.
Yeah, have to be simple and short, yes, but it has to be right to the point.
Well, I mean, like Kurt said, I mean, this stuff is been addressed in the environmental impact report, and once you get into HOAs and security, I mean, it's just sort of outside of our scope, really.
Yeah, I don't know how, speaking about Karen's comment regarding the HOA, I don't know how, I mean, do we include that, or is that something we leave to HOA to deal with?
I mean, I agree with her, but I just don't think it's something that we, again, it's one of these things that can get brought up, but in terms of just telling them we want to negotiate the size of this project for these reasons, I think the less in the weeds we get with this, the better.
John, are you talking about not going and letting the CMR HOA review our letter?
No, I was talking about Karen's comment specifically about saying that the
about
HOA,
having it
a
all
single
under-
HOA.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it's going to work because
we can't control what they do as far as, I mean, the CMRSSCC, whether this new project becomes part of that or not is just way outside of our ability to affect anything.
I think it's definitely not. It's going to be a separate master with each of the separate apartment complexes being a sub.
And they're doing that as
Or
a way.
even not. I mean, basically the same model as what we have, but they're going to not be entangled with the existing one.
Isn't that like how Cambridge and the Jefferson and all those other apartment projects, aren't they all separate anyway?
No,
Right.
they're all part of the HOA of the existing RCA. Yeah, each of them is the same as like one of the districts like Belfour or Walden or whatever.
Yeah, the only thing that's not is the golf course.
Inside the walls of Cambridge is not part of our, that's all being privately maintained. They pay a higher fee.
That's a sub, right?
We're only paying 46?
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen with those other developments.
And they're not going to, I mean, they're not going to entertain joining the CMRSSCC because they're probably getting sued by them. And I mean,
Right.
it's messy and we can't get into that.
Yeah, Jonathan threw that out at the very, very beginning, but I think that disappeared pretty quickly. And I don't think the existing HOA wants to be part of it.
Really?
That's
I think
kind of-
it's very important, but I kind of agree with, I can see the thinking on that, Harold, that the master HOA doesn't want to entertain more responsibility. But I think it would be better for the community overall as a unifying way that we're all under one umbrella.
I don't disagree with that. I don't think anybody does.
Have you
Yeah,
guys
we
thought
increase
about
our HOA fees though.
what about liability? I mean, I don't want to be responsible for something that New Urban West does and we get sued all together. We haven't. Maybe he can tell us.
I don't think the HOA has publicly spoken on this, and I don't think it's a good idea to put it in this letter.
Okay,
That's the only answer we need at the moment.
thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
Alan, I have one question. Has the HOA publicly spoken about a number of units in the project? Any, position on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So we need to get the number of units in there. We need to decide if we're amending anything, adding anything, and we need to get this thing nailed down so that we can move it to the board to vote on.
So
Are we going to add a wildfire evacuation plan be added?
That was something that I mean, if we were, I mean, that was done in the EIR response comments. They're gonna respond to that. They're gonna tell us whatever they have to tell us about it, I guess.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, I guess the intent is we're trying to send us out before the final EIR is done, or are we gonna wait till the final EIR?
That's a good question. I mean, if we're waiting, I mean, my impression that I got last board meeting was that people felt it was urgent that we complete this and get it memorialized. Although at the same time, I do see some utility in not doing it until the final EIR is done. I think though that reaching out, I mean, Mark made the point of, bringing Kevin Wang in. I don't know whether there's going to be any traction gained there, but I mean, at some point we got to reach out to the city, the developer, whoever will listen and say, we want to talk about the size of this thing. We're not, sorry, there's a fly in my, so I don't know. I mean, I got the distinct impression that there were several people that were anxious to get this letter done and sent regardless, but I can also see that it might be better done afterwards. So, I mean, if we're not trying to finalize this letter tonight, then we should probably, end the discussion and table it for now, but we either have to,
I don't think we know how long this thing is going to take. I looked at the timeline on the Junipers project, and the time from the end of the public comment period to the draft EIR to the issuance was 9 months.
Yeah, it was a long time. The impression they gave us at the beginning was that they were working through this much more quickly, but then at some point seemed to get bogged down, according to some, because of just city staff bandwidth, not because the material was so, I don't know why, they seem to indicate it was going to happen very quickly. And the last couple of comments I've heard is it's taking a little longer. So,
well, if anything was giving them trouble, they wouldn't tell us anyway. They're just not honest in that way.
Well, that's true. So I don't know, folks. I mean, if we don't need to finalize this letter here tonight, then what are we doing?
I think we have time to get the letter to our HOA and Sierra Club and have them make some comments on it. And, just the draft of what we have right now and what we're going to add about the units and the deed restricted units percentage. Other than that, I think we should wait until the EIR, until we hear a little bit more about the EIR.
That almost sounds like a motion, but you didn't quite state it as such.
Motion that we make the minor changes to our draft letter by John Chu to add the 30% deed restricted units, 475 units, with the calculations of using the 101 acres being proposed to be developed on by New Urban West, and that the letter be reviewed by the Carmel Mountain Ranch Homeowners Association and the Sierra Club for additional comments. And I don't think the letter needs to be more than 3 pages.
Okay.
The deed restriction, it's a good idea to have it on a golf course property, and this will prevent them future development on extra land. So deed restriction is a good idea, yes.
As the writer of this, or the person updating this document, I second that motion, and I
Okay.
will send out an updated copy with, I'll incorporate, I think I read through most of Kurt's comments. I agree with most of them. So
Okay.
incorporate what I think makes the most sense, and of course, what we talked about tonight.
Okay,
Could you also shoot a copy to CMR United, please?
of course.
Of the draft. Thank you so much.
Yeah, when
Thank
Yeah,
you.
he was, we definitely had copied Troy on the
All right, thank you.
distribution initially, and will continue to.
So I will send my copy to Eric, and he can send to whoever.
Okay, so the motion is then to amend the letter that we currently have to include number of units around 454 based on that 101 acre calculation, to add the statement that we'd like to see 30% of the units being deed restricted affordable homes, and that we're going to allow CMRU, CMRRCA, and Sierra Club to review the draft before we finalize it. Does that sound like a fair restatement of what we're talking about? So, okay, all those in favor? I mean, is anyone opposed or abstaining from this? So can we say we have unanimous approval of that motion? Very good. Okay, well, I guess we get somewhere, and I'm definitely, I hope I'm not coming across as combative in any way. I'm only just trying to steer us to a resolution so that we can move the ball down the field a little bit. And I think people understand that. So, I mean, that's what we came here to do tonight, to talk about this and advance it down the field. So John, it doesn't seem like it'll probably take you too long to make those edits, or I don't want to volunteer you for.
I'll get to you in a day or two.
All right, good. As soon as John sends it to me, I will forward it to Troy. I'll forward it to Gary Brizard. I'll copy you, Alan. And then the guy, Greer, forget it, I think his name was Greer, the Sierra Club guy. I'll find out who over there, because I think he was the immediate past chair, but I'll find out who over there needs to receive this. We'll get it reviewed. And if anything comes back urgently, we'll have a special meeting to address it. Otherwise, we'll talk about it at the next big meeting, or if we need to, we'll hold another subcommittee meeting in between now and then. But that's what I understand we're doing. If anybody has any different idea, then let me know. But I think we're all pretty much on the same page. Seems like it. Okay. All right. So with that, then we're going to go ahead and adjourn for the evening and keep this thing going. To Mark's point, I'll reach out to Kevin Wang. I got no problem with that. I'll reach out again to Frankel as well and say, I'll raise it
Frankel
again.
doesn't work there anymore. So.
Well, he's still it's a weird. Yes, he got a new job, but he's still their project manager on this. He told me that he's still working it through to the end. As far as that was my last understanding of it anyway, but that was a few weeks ago.
Kathy's retiring, I bet.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I'll reach out to those folks, and I'm still working to I'm working on getting a meeting with the mayor's office. And initially it seemed like the mayor himself was likely to meet with me, but now it's seeming more like he's going to send a surrogate. So I'll keep you posted on that. But other than that, I think we're good here tonight. I'm going to call it adjourned. I'm going to stop recording. So I'm killing the